Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. We are delighted to welcome you to VIRŠI Investor Webinar. Today we are hosted by VIRŠI Chairman of the Management Board and the CEO Jānis Vība, as well as member of the Management Board, CFO Vita Čirjevska. During the webinar, you will be introduced with VIRŠI most recent key activities and financial results, as well as an insight into company's future plans. After the presentation, we will have a Q&A session. To submit your question to the company, please use the Q&A window that you can find at the bottom of the screen. The recording of the webinar will be available shortly after the session. Now, without further ado, I'm handing it over to Vita and Jānis.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. Dear shareholders, investors, partners, we are happy to be here. And as you can see, I guess also in other countries, there is a hot weather outside the window. So exactly so hot was the first half of 2022 for VIRŠI. And today we would like to tell you more about it. So let me remind what is VIRŠI. VIRŠI has three main business segments. So one is obviously the fuel. Then we also have convenience stores. And then the third segment, which is relatively new, only maybe a bit older than 1 year, is energy segment. And because this energy segment is also quite strategically important for us in future, let me begin with some let's say key observations on what is happening in the energy market in the last couple of quarters. So if you divide the energy market in three segments, which is fuel, electricity, and natural gas, then we see that there are so-called, in English, it's perfect storm. Obviously, this meaning that there is a lot of challenges and happenings occurring at the same time. In fuel segment, we see that this price increase, let's say, compared to the beginning of the year, is quite significant. It is depending on which months you are looking at, it's around 60, 50, 70%. And obviously, the main reason currently is the fact that the world's economy is still quite strong, and this demand for oil is still quite big. And obviously, this is also impacting this pricing. On supply side, obviously, after this Russian invasion in Ukraine, supply side has been suffering, meaning that Russian oil is now, everybody is trying to migrate away from Russian oil, and therefore the supply of oil is reducing in the market. So what we have in the end is that we are having still quite strong demand. We are having slower or lower this supply. So obviously this has quite a big pressure on oil pricing, which we see in the market. However, of course, many people, obviously it's quite trendy to think about that there might be some recession and an economic slowdown coming in a couple of next months or quarters. And that, yes, that may be the case. And if that happens, obviously, then this demand for oil might reduce. And if that happens, obviously, then this price can also be a bit lower in a couple of quarters. But let's see, it's just a guess. On electricity side, what we see, at least in let's say Baltic region, is that electricity is increasing quite in terms of pricing quite significantly. So more than 3 times versus last year. And the problem here is probably the fact that there are still quite low, let's say, possibilities to produce renewable energy, meaning wind parks or solar parks. That is a segment which is obviously quite developing, but still there is some time which will be needed in order for this segment to generate some good supply numbers in electricity. And secondly, of course, it's very important to note that quite significant part of electricity is produced from natural gas. And there are some cogeneration plants which are actually not even working because currently natural gas pricing is very, very high, and it does not make, let's say, economic sense to produce it from natural gas. And on top of that, of course, what we see is that in case manufacturer wants to produce electricity from fossil resources, it has to pay some CO2 quotas. And these CO2 quotas are also, in terms of pricing, being quite high over the last couple of quarters, which obviously again pushes this electricity pricing up. And in terms of what is expected for future, of course, nobody knows, but let's say our guess is that in terms of, let's say, 1-2 years, there should be at least some kind of price normalization in these products. And the third one, of course, is natural gas. The trend of price increase started already last year. There was a cold winter. There was also quite a big demand for electricity, which is produced from natural gas. And obviously this demand had quite significant impact on this price level. At the same time, what we see is that these geopolitical movements in terms of Ukraine, we see that Russia has stopped Nord Stream 1 flow of gas, which again is making the situation even worse. And currently, actually, this TTF index, which is market index for gas, is already above 200, which is something which was probably unimaginable a couple of years ago, but that's a new reality which we have to work with. And again, most likely, once there are some LNG substitution coming in the market in coming years, then we should see some normalization of pricing in 1-2 years. So that's about the overall energy market, but let me then move on to Vita, who will introduce you with financial results.
So to the financial results or highlights, I would like to start presenting this 2022 first half of the year results by telling you a story about two different worlds that we are facing. One world was 2021 first half of the year, where internally VIRŠI as a company was not public entity. It was held by 5 shareholders here locally. We were at that time preparing for the IPO. We were changing the rules internally. We were understanding where we need to improve the controls and setting up new targets. And then this company was still just in preparation phase. In 2022, it's already a new company. It's quoted in Nasdaq, and it's already applying the rules, working on the new changed reality. And that's a big story for the company as such. But if we look outside globally in the market, actually the story is even bigger, because last year in the first half, there was a market shaker called COVID-19, and it also pushed on the prices on inflation, but and this inflation move started. But if we look at the new reality in 2022, then we actually understand that the shaker COVID is in its baby steps compared to shaker Putin that we are having here right now, and that has raised this perfect storm in a part, and that has impacted a lot in our operations and our plans and strategies. But if we look at the results of VIRŠI as a company, we see that net profits has risen compared to the last year's first part by 113% or 3 million euro. If we look at the EBITDA, we have risen by 47.6% or 2 million euro. And if we look back 3 or 5 years, you name it, how long you analyze, VIRŠI started the trend of growth, and no matter what happens inside or outside the company, this wave of growth is still kept strong. And also, if we look at the VIRŠI as a company, then our equity has risen a lot since 2021 as we attracted new capital in our initial public offering, but still the return on equity is growing strong, and we are keeping up our let's say development in a really good position. when we finished 2021, we were speaking about the muscles of the company that we had grown at that time. Let's say the first part of 2022 was our own presentation to ourselves, I think so, that we are really strong and we have these muscles, and this also reflected on results. We had some challenges with working capital, but with all the resources kept close together and analyzing the situation, we are now in very good position liquidity wise and also balance sheet wise, and I believe we'll keep this position in the next periods as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. If we illustrate what has happened, let's say main things in first 6 months of 2022, then as already mentioned by me and Vita, of course, we are currently working in new geopolitical reality, and it of course took some resources and time for us to adjust, but we did it very quickly. And currently what we have done, we have terminated all relationships with Russian and Belarusian partners and producers. And obviously we are also trying to support as much as we can Ukraine in terms of the people who are coming to Latvia. We are trying to give them jobs. We are also giving some financial aid. So we are like trying to show that our solidarity with Ukraine. Of course, as Vita mentioned, we see that this first half of the 2022 was very strong in terms of financial results, despite all these geopolitical movements. So we are quite happy about that. And also it's important to note that we continue to work on one of the strategic goals, which is to expand our station network. So we opened 3 new stations in Riga and also renovated several of these stations. And so we are quite aggressively continuing to grow in terms of a number of stations in Latvia. Also, which is quite important event, at least in Latvia, is that we communicated that we have acquired 20% of shares in Skulte LNG terminal. This is one of the 2 projects which is currently evaluated by government, and we are waiting some news in coming, hopefully, weeks or months. And let's say if we see that there is some support from government in terms of bureaucratical constraint removal, then we see huge potential for this LNG terminal project to move on. And of course, then if that happens, there will be also some discussions. Actually, we already are closing some discussions with some bigger partners, because the project is very large, and we will obviously need some additional partners to execute this project in order to ensure that Latvian, let's say, independence on energy market is let's say, ensured. Also important to note that we have this new segment, which is energy segment, and in this segment we are currently having quite rapid development of electricity product. Currently we are offering electricity to B2B customers, and we are also doing some actions in order to ensure that our electricity pricing for group is much, let's say, lower than currently available in market. So we already have conducted some deals in last couple of quarters, which is making us much stronger on, let's say, electricity buying side. And of course, a big focus is on sustainability. So we are continuing to work on this biomethane project, which is obviously this green natural gas, which we can produce here locally in Latvia and then either export it to other countries where is a big demand for this product, or put it in local transport industry, so that our, let's say, heavy trucks which are currently using CNG as a product, are moving to biomethane and becoming really green. And also important to note is this electricity charging network, which we are quite strongly developing. Currently, we have 10 places where we are providing such product, but we are working together with European institutions on ensuring that at least 20 more places we will have in next 1 or 2 years. So Europe, there are some Europe funds which are supporting this project, and we hope that we will be, as mentioned, in 2 years' time, we will have 20 stations more to this pipeline. And additionally, of course, there is some work on solar parks, which we are currently evaluating, because this economy of solar parks is currently becoming much stronger than a couple of years ago, because obviously the price of electricity is very high, and therefore this return on this investment is also becoming much better. So yeah, that's on sustainability, and I guess we can move on to fuel market. Fuel market. So the first of our segment here, you can see that in the green columns we are indicating that we are growing in terms of liters sold in retail. We are growing much, let's say, faster than the market. So we are growing in 5 months by roughly 9%, versus market is growing by 2%. So we are gaining some market shares, which is obviously quite a good thing, which we are happy about. Still, it's important to note that we are still having some, let's say, for fuel market specific challenges. One of them is that still we are having this highest excise duty tax for diesel in Baltic, which is reducing our competitiveness with Lithuanian and Estonian markets. And also we are having some changes in local legislation, which is starting from July 1st. Basically in Latvia, there is no more mandatory bio component which has to be used in fuel. And of course, because this decision came very, let's say, suddenly, there are many players in market, including us, which has to adjust to this new reality. And we also see that this demand for alternative fuels, which is electricity in light segment of cars, but also in heavy truck segment, we have this CNG, which is compressed natural gas. We see that this increase in these volumes for alternative fuels is growing quite significantly, even despite the fact that we are seeing that the price for natural gas, of course, is very high currently. But still, we see that there is a new bus parks, new logistic companies, also some transportation companies and waste management companies. So we are quite happy about development of this product, especially CNG. Yeah. So this about fuel. Now let's move on to
convenience stores.
Yeah.
Yeah, about the convenience stores. Last year was a huge growth, and it was like a super record boosting, and we grew by 33.2%. Looking at this year, when we set up such a high growth benchmark, it's hard to actually to set really targets on the next periods, because you know that it's hard to do better. But this year we have done quite good. We have gone up by 21.3%. In turnover in euros, it's 22.1% or 3 million euros. And we have been doing better than market also in this segment. And we have had quite positive drivers in this sense. And one of them is what we were expecting for a long time. That's post-pandemic activities, when we can get together in our teams and get together with our clients and share experiences and provide the service we would like to have, compared to the period when we had the huge restrictions last year. And that was a positive side. Then we also extended our network by 7 new shops over the past 12 months, and also renovated a couple of stations in a way you wouldn't even recognize them. Some of them are just like demolished to the zero and built up like a new store. So there has been a big transformation, expansion also our station network-wise. Then the big, let's say, bonus to our network is also what happens with our products, and especially with the catering and coffee. And we are adapting to the new trends by not drinking milk, eating vegan and vegetarian foods, and also adapting to the new taste our clients want. And our new transformed offer is very attractive to our clients in a way that also the loyal customer base continues growing over the years, and it's still at high level as it was in the past periods. And also in this half of the year, we had a really big challenges that we understand that will continue over the next periods, as Janis presented. Also the resource pricing that surely affects also the cost of the products we put on our stores, and also on catering and coffee. The inflation and uncertainty about the product price is what we're facing daily. And also, of course, labor market challenges, especially in retail in Latvia, that are quite high. Also, by entering new players in the market, the situation becomes even tighter. And when VIRŠI is constantly opening new stations, the let's say run for the good talent is constant issue for us. And that's these are two effects that we are facing right now, and we will be facing in the future, because we are not planning to stop. And but I believe we are strong to face them, and we'll do it.
Sure.
Yeah.
Now let's move on to the third segment of business. So this is electricity trading, which is part of our energy segment. And basically what we have done in last year, because this segment is quite new, so only just slightly over 1 year old. So we have established quite active work with local electricity producers, which are producing electricity from water, solar, biomass, biogas. And we are basically using this electricity, which is produced either for our own needs, or we are selling it to our B2B customers. And the good thing is what we have managed in this year is that basically we are, as mentioned, we have conducted quite good deals in electricity market, which basically is ensuring us that we are having quite low electricity cost in coming years. And therefore also Vita will tell you more, but in the balance sheet and P&L, you can see that there are some benefits from M2M or this mark-to-market valuation on this financial instruments and electricity. And additionally, it's important to know that we are currently having around 40 customers in B2B segment. And as you can see in this graph, that we are growing this electricity produced and sold quite significantly over the last couple of months, which is quite, at least in our mind, quite strong and impressive growth. So now it's time for numbers.
Yeah. So we are back to the profit statement, profit and loss, but for VIRŠI, it's rather profits over the past years. I already mentioned that our profits have grown by 113%, or 3 million in net profit position, and 2 million EBITDA, or 47.6%. But now we can look closer what's in it. Of course, immediately you would notice the increase in turnover. And what we see from the market, the society thinks that it's actually, let's say, the fuel traders who want to just increase their turnover on customers. But actually, if we look at closer to the VIRŠI figures, then we would see that this increase in the net sales is related to several effects. One of them is the fuel station network growth that has introduced 7 new stations over the past 12 months. And then, of course, there is a, let's say, purchase price driven price increase also to the fuel and actually other products as well. If we look at the fuel as such, then the rough average to the one unit sold in 2022 compared to one unit sold in 2021 has risen by 53%. That would sound very good if there wouldn't be such an increase also to the resource pricing and availability in the market. So if we look at the gross profits, the gross profit has grown by 4.5 million or 38%. But the trick about the gross profits is the gross margin that has been reducing from one period to another. It has been 10.6% in 2022 and 12.2% in last year. That's mainly related to the fact that actually we as a trader were not able to set margins as high as the sky. We are limited to what we earn. Also, with the prices reaching higher, we're not able to set the price as high, and the competition for the client in the market right now is quite high, and that's what we're facing in the first half of the year, and also now with let's say price wars in the fuel station networks in Latvia. As a company, we see that also the selling expenses has increased. That's related to the two blocks mainly. One is, of course, is as the network is bigger, the cost of maintaining the network is higher. Also, the resource pricing, and at the same time, also the labor market driven price increase has increased the selling expenses. Nevertheless, we know that our figures grow. We are really focused on not rising the costs too high. We are really focusing so that we keep them in a balance, and we look for the new markets and new ways and strategies how to get our profits going in longer period. If we look outside the EBITDA, we'll see that financial revenues have grown from the 2021 to 2022 by 1.4 million. And here the main effect is that, as Jans already mentioned, we have a recognized financial instrument, or in lighter words, actually, we have purchased some electricity for period in longer term in 2023 to 2027. And here this financial instruments value rise as the price at that time was, let's say for this time of the year, impossible. And then actually as prices continue to grow, we have fixed our pricing for period that increases the financial instruments value. And here is the net gain by 1.5 million compared to the end of the year 2021. And let's look at the balance sheet. Looking at the asset side of the balance sheet, for the main things I would like to discuss about the capex and investment in associates. These investments are part of investments we were setting up as a target in our prospectus, or when we went to the IPO. One of our targets was to expand the fuel station network, to increase the investment and the network of the CNG stations, and also work on the biomethane. All these three targets together were set to have 92% of the total IPO funding attracted. So in this year, we have been working with financial investments as well as or let's say the human capital really to meet these targets. And this year in August, we will open a new fuel station with a big CNG station and let's say not charging fueling with CNG for bus park in Daugavpils. You are welcome to, let's say, see and enjoy the new station already in August. And of course, as Jānis mentioned, also in this half of the year, and also in the past last half of the year in 2021, we had extensive increase in our station network. If we look at one of the targets also proposed in the IPO, it was IT strategy and IT investments. That's actually one big milestone, and that's a place where we invest quite a lot of resources, as we see that this is a very significant thing to be developed in each and every business side. In electricity, customer loyalty, shop, you name it, everywhere is IT. So in this period, even if it's not measured in the millions, I'd say company-wise, we focus a lot on IT development and how VIRŠI performs IT-wise. In this period, we have had a new resource of financing that affected and helped us a lot, also planning our operating activities, and also affected our equity side. So we had the funding from SEB Bank loan that's kept at quite the same level over the past years. We have a cash flow from our operating activities, and we have capital raised at stock exchange in November 2021, and these three cash inflows in the company has helped us to manage our working capital over the first half of 2022 with a huge rise in the pricing. We had a big management and big resources in trade receivables and trade payables, and also in the stock, and also adding to this, as Jānis mentioned, there were changes in regulations and requirements in bio components by Minister's Cabinet in June 2022. So just 2 weeks before the closing up the period for 2022, we got to know that actually the bio component and our readiness to provide market with a diesel plus bio component is not necessary because it's postponed. Also here is mentioned the totals for the financial instruments. You can see that the total in assets and total in liabilities have gone really high. In asset side 12.5 million, in liability side 9.9. Net effect, net balance sheet from the financial instruments is 2.6 million, giving this positive change also in interest income for the period. But on the liabilities side, here I would like to say that there are main things that we see, main changes are related to equity and you as a shareholders as such. We raised 7.3 million euros last year in November as a net value, and actually this year we already distributed dividends for the 2021. We set up the dividend policy that is 20% of our consolidated net profits, and we distributed dividends in June 2022. Right now, looking at the profits of 2022, we know that we will keep the same policy. The policy is up to 20%. We will look at the profits we have when the financial year will be closed, and decision for the shareholders to vote will be open in 2023 about the dividends for 2022. If we look at the balance sheet as such, on liability side, I already discussed about the effect from the trade creditors. But this year, if we look at the liquidity ratios, we are balancing, and as I said, these new resources of funding has helped us to be quite successful, and we have closed this period by current ratio of 1.24, and looking at the corresponding period in 2021, it was 1.1. And that's a quite good increase, and that's really helpful for us now facing the second part of the year. We also are happy about these earnings per share ratios that we are reaching in this half of the year, and also compared to the full year, In first half of the year, we reached it by 0.37 euros per share, and in last year it was only 20 euros per share. So the profitability is rising, the balance sheet is stable, and I think we can look at the targets of 2024.
Yeah, exactly. So just to finalize this presentation, so let me remind that back in IPO process, we set some strategic goals. As you can see, we have to grow EBIT by 15 million by 2024. Net profit should be around 9 million, and network of stations should be around 80. And we should also continue to be #1 player in alternative fuel market by introducing also biomethane and obviously continuing work on this electricity and CNG products. And also important to note that shop is quite, let's say, important segment for us. So we are trying to boost the sales of shop even more, so that by 2024, in terms of gross profit, the shop is becoming already above 50% of total group's profit. And we think that it's manageable and doable. And in terms of business diversification, we are of course entering this energy segment, so that this is exactly what we told you already during presentations, that there are concrete steps which we have done. And in terms of top ranked employer, we are currently also doing quite a significant amount of HR, let's say, related exercises within the group, so that we are becoming more and more attractive to employees, and we are able to attract really the top talent from the market. So these are the goals which I wanted to remind we are working on, and I guess based on what we presented today, let me suggest that we are moving in the right direction to execute on these goals. So that's, I guess, on this part, and we are of course ready to hear on questions.
Yes, let's now open the floor to Q&A session. We have received a couple of questions before the session, so we'll start with those, and then we'll continue with the questions submitted online. For all the participants, if you would like to use a chance and ask your question to the management of VIRŠI, please use the Q&A box that you see on the bottom of your screen. So the first question in line: what are the strategic development plans for the near future?
Yeah, let me put it in 3 sections. So the first one would be that we are obviously continuing to work quite aggressively on expanding our network. So we are opening around 4 to 5 stations per year, and we think that we can manage and still do it in coming years, so that we reach this ultimate goal of around 80 stations by 2024. So that is the first part which we are working quite, let's say, strongly on. The second one is obviously all these projects which are related to so-called green journey, let's say. On this green journey also, as mentioned, so we are working extensively on a biomethane project. We are working on solar energy, and we are also working, of course, on this transport sustainability by giving light cars this electricity product in some new stations we are planning to do. And also on this heavy trucks, there is this CNG product which later on will be transformed into biomethane. And yeah, and then the third, I guess, let's say, segment which we are also quite aggressively working on is this electricity field, in which we are planning to introduce already electricity product for households in next months. Not in next, basically that would be early or first half of 2023. And we think that by giving this electricity to customers, we can make a really attractive bundle which contains shop, fuel, electricity in one bundle, and therefore could be quite attractive to our customers.
Thank you. Are there changes in the dividends policy expected?
The short answer is no. At the same time, as we see the profit dynamics, we obviously are targeting to distribute in dividends according to policy up to 20% from the net profits. And for the, let's say, 2022, if the profits are good, then the amount will rise, but the limit is still 20. Yeah.
Thank you. Can you elaborate more on the EV charging plans for VIRŠI?
Yeah, as already mentioned, we are currently having around 10 stations in Latvia, but we are working to establish around 20 more stations in 1 to 2 years' time. And in order to do that, we are working with European institutions to get some, let's say, part of the funding for that. And I think that yes, that project is being executed, and once it is already done, then it seems that in, let's say, 2 years' time, the total number of our charging points should reach around 30 points, which is quite okay, because of course this electricity market is still only beginning to develop. Currently, electricity cars are containing around 0.3% only from the total cars in Latvia. So I think that with these 30 stations, we definitely will be very strong in local market. But of course, we are doing that in terms of long-term strategy, because currently the business is still quite small in that field.
Thank you. Coming back to the data shown during the presentation, what happened with electricity sales in May?
Yeah, let me just double check what happened in May. So yeah, so we are, I guess there is some slight drop, but basically the answer is that we are having a number of electricity producers, as mentioned, and depending on what amount and how many producers are we having each month, then obviously this electricity production is being impacted. So it's important to note that as stated in this graph, it is sum of electricity sold and electricity bought. Yeah? So it's therefore there are some if there are some fluctuations in electricity bought, then also this graph is being impacted. So that's a short answer.
Yeah. Thank you. Regarding electricity derivative, do you see substantial competitive advantage in electricity segments in period 2023 to 2027 by being able to offer appealing tariffs? Is that something common that all electricity traders do?
Yeah, let me maybe answer that. So basically, what this derivative is being used for in 23-27, it's two goals. One goal is that we are using it for our own group needs, because obviously with close to 70 stations, we are quite a big electricity consumer. So we are using part of this. Let me call it as a cheap electricity for our local needs. And then another part, we already have some cooperation with other our partners, and we have already let's put it in simple way, we have sold it further. Yeah. So for households, I would not say that we will consume some part from this energy, and therefore the tariffs will be very low. In reality, of course, we are most likely the scenario is that this household offer will be the same. In terms of tariffs, maybe close to the same as for other market players, which is based on market index, and there is some pricing adjusting. But the attractiveness in this will be that we will combine it together with fuel and shop products, and therefore it will be more interesting than to buy it separately.
Thank you. Do you have plans to expand to neighboring countries?
Yeah, our ambition is quite big. We have really, I would say, very good talent which we have gathered in the company, and of course there are some locally established goals which we still have to achieve in Latvia in terms of market share and other things. But I think that maybe it's not a question of this year, but we will be in coming years thinking about entering some other Baltic countries because we see that very logical next step would be this Baltic region.
Thank you. Continuing on the dividend topic, are there any plans to pay dividends more often than annually?
I'd say no, not at this period of development of the company. Our main focus with the profits is to reinvest them and put them in work, in capex and in strategical investments. Dividends are distributed once in a year, and there is no different plan at this point. And but I'm welcoming everybody to get their shareholder loyalty cards, and that's one way of getting use of being shareholder in which company.
Thank you. All questions are answered, but before we're finalizing the webinar, one of the participants gives a big shout out to the personnel at the Uzvaras Boulevard station in Riga, who are very helpful and welcoming. So it seems you're doing a good job on attracting talent.
Yeah, so we will pass this information to our head of retail, and hopefully we will cascade it down to employees now.
Thank you. So we have recorded this webinar. The recording will soon be available online, so please follow VIRŠI announcements. Thank you for a valuable hour to spend together.
Thank you.
Thank you.